One. 4 o'clock Friday afternoon, folks. Ted Ralston here in downtown Honolulu in the Think Tech Hawaii studios. Welcome to our first show of 2016, and a shout out to all our people who were on the show last year as guests and as victims and as witnesses. I want to say that this is actually the first time we've run the show from the Honolulu studio. Last week we ran the show from the Think Tech Hawaii East Coast studio in Concord, New Hampshire in the snow. And this week we actually have our Silicon Valley studio occupied by our guest, Bruce Parks. Bruce, are you there?
I'm here, Ted.
There
nice
you are,
to
Bruce.
See you.
Great. Good to see you, Bruce, and thanks for coming back. Bruce is a frequent flyer on this show, talking about drones, drone racing, and the evolving science and technology of drones through his work at AUVSI, which is the international organization that sponsors the information exchange and technology development and competitions and such, and also works with Rotor Sports International, which is putting on an incredible competition here in Hawaii next year. So, Bruce, next year is going to be a really busy year for everybody in the drone business, in the drone user area, in the regulations and everything. Give us your thoughts on how we're going to manage all that confusion coming forth next year.
Well, I tell you, if I had that crystal ball, Ted, we'd both be in great shape. I mean, we're really going to see liftoff this year in the drone industry. Really, as widely as I can imagine it, they're almost at every level, from the drone racing to special applications. The FAA is really beginning to issue permits to people to fly. So it's going to be a very, very important year for the industry.
That's true for Hawaii as well. In fact, I think we'll rename this show from where the road leads to where the drone leads, as Jay Fidel or someone has suggested earlier, because that's what this is going to be all about pretty much this year. Let's get to the exciting part. Bruce, talk a little bit about what's happening in October 2016 here in Hawaii.
Well, in the beginning, I believe it's October 20th. We'll be having the first ever international drone racing competition on Oahu out at your beautiful Kualoa Ranch.
And this is first ever international drone racing competition. First ever.
And we'll have competitors from 30 to 40 different countries competing. It's going to be a very, very exciting event. We will be able to live stream it. We will have coverage from a major sports channel, undefined at the moment, but we will have it by the time we get there. It's just going to be incredibly excited, and the part that I'm most excited about, Ted, is our ability to really introduce drone racing to the world in a different level. I mean, people tend to see drones as something that is less than optimal. But I think we're going to see drone racing be an exciting sport. And for me, the more important part is we will be able to introduce drone racing to young people and have them really see the attraction of it. I like to say that drone racing is that it is really the entry drug to the drone world, because once you use it, it's very, very addictive.
And that's pretty cool, Bruce, from the human side you put on the discussion. You know, so many people are in the drone world of technology, such as myself, and get tangled up in just the technology and forget to express it in human terms. But the attraction that drone racing has to the young people who need to follow in our footsteps after we're exiting stage left is a very valuable aspect. In fact, you might even think, and I've used this expression before, that Indy 500 racing is what has developed the car industry, and in the same sense, the drone racing is going to be where the cutting edge of the next level of technology will come from. That'll be turned into a use to the people through the drone racing exercise.
Oh, it is. The iterations that will come out of the racing are going to be phenomenal. And you know, Ted, what will occur is that once people get into drone racing, they're gonna graduate to larger aircraft and even manned aircraft. They'll be able to use that as a gateway to jobs in the whole spectrum of the robotics industry, whether it's drones, whether it's industrial robots, wherever it may be. The whole robotics industry door opens up for these young people, and it's just a wonderful gateway.
You know, that's really cool. We had on this show last week, even though we were in Concord, we had a couple of guys here in Honolulu from Oceanet right down the street, And by the way, you're in Silicon Valley, and this location of this studio is the Silicon Valley of Hawaii. Downtown Honolulu is the technology park of Hawaii, as it turns out. But we had a couple guys in here talking about computer vision and some of the really interesting means by which a plain old video stream can be turned into a whole different range of information. And I think that we're going to see a lot of development of that in the next couple of years, and we ought to get the drone racers to be the interpreters of the use of that kind of technology in terms of rapid cognition, decision making, and precision of operation. We have to get drones or UASs down to very precise operation as part of their reliability campaign. And the ability to, once again, extract from an onboard video much more information than just is in a video in ways that it can be used to drive the guidance, navigation, and control is what we have to get to. And drone racing is the perfect place to examine that. It's safe. If you hit a tree or something in the drone racing, no big deal. It's in a secure environment. And yet we need to, in drone racing, you got to shave margins down to 6 inches or a couple of feet around a turn point or something. And so this is a great place to exercise the technology in a totally safe environment, but also an environment driven by a rapid pace, because basically the Silicon Valley type people are behind us, and pace isn't something that they are satisfied to see a low number on. So this is one example of where the conversion of these technologies can be brought together and expressed in a utility factor, which then has aspects in a much broader range of operations than just drone racing. And we're not supposed to monologue on this show. First one and the last one of 2016. Over to you, Bruce.
Well, yeah, I'm in complete agreement with you, Ted. And the truth of the matter is, we cannot foresee the spin-off that will occur as people enter into this technology and begin to expand upon it and change it and be able to use the technology in ways that we really have yet to conceive of. As you probably noticed, Ted, there was a large, what was really a large drone introduced at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas last week that will actually be able to carry a person. Now, that particular product is coming out of China. It's going to be a while, I'm sure, before that thing is actually ready to go. But my prediction is that you will see somebody starting to race those things, but they will race it unmanned. But I think you'll see vehicles that size raced, and you can probably build one, for $100,000 or less that is that size and some of that complexity. And I think you may see that, and that gets back to the NASCAR piece of the development of the automotive industry. I think you'll see the same thing with these drones as they get bigger, used for different applications. And when you're racing them, you're really testing equipment at extreme circumstances, and you'll learn something from it when they fail.
You sure do. You learn where the limits are, and you learn what you have to make more robust for the next time out. But scaling back from $100,000 drones that are capable of hauling a man to the sort of thing we'll be talking about in Kualoa Ranch next year, I didn't bring with me, as you can see on the table here, a model. I was going to bring one, and it is still in the box at home. But this is all about virtual reality. So describe to us, Bruce, what these drones look like, the drone racer drones look like, and what the race course and the type of racing will be, so people can get an idea. We're not talking about just drag races down a straightaway. We're talking about some pretty complex maneuvering and such here.
Yeah, well, you've got varying size aircraft that will be racing, anywhere from the small, roughly dinner plate size drones, all the way up to the to a larger mid-range drone, and then of course your flying wings. So you really have a spectrum of aircraft that will be flown, both in size and required skill sets. And so that's going to be that part is just now developing as well. We've formed, as I think I've mentioned to you, Ted, we've formed a nonprofit to govern those races. It's called the United States Roto Sports Association. It's a nonprofit based upon setting the rules and effectively sitting in the same place, perhaps, as the NFL sits to various football teams. That we will establish the the rules and the regulations, make sure that people adhere to them. And right now we are just right at the moment concluding the drafting of the rules governing the size of the equipment and what they may carry.
So that's cool. So standards will start occurring in terms of the management of the racing. Will the first use of that set of standards be the 2016 October event here in Hawaii?
Oh yes, that is what will govern that race. Yes.
So we're kicking off not just racing, we're kicking off the standardization and a sort of an administration of the whole process, imagining a very robust future for this particular subset of technology. But talk about the race course itself. I mean, Kualoa Ranch has variable terrain. It's got the ko'olaus in the back, very steep. It's got trees. It's got rolling hills. I presume that the race courses themselves will include a lot of obstacle clearance and a lot of slalom type events and this sort of thing?
Yes, the primary race, Ted, with the smaller drones will be on what effectively is a steeplechase type of course. It will have curves and it will have obstacles that they have to go over and under. It will be a curved race course so that people will be racing around that course, and it requires an incredible amount of skill for these pilots. Now, keep in mind that they're flying with what they call forward position view cameras, which is a camera that you are effectively sitting in the cockpit of that plane. So the pilot that is flying the plane is actually virtually sitting at the front of the plane to see where that plane is going and flying accordingly. And the wonderful thing about it is that same transmission can be sent out to other people who could also be effectively flying with that pilot simultaneously. So it really becomes a spectator sport in a sort of multidimensional world. It's a real breakthrough.
So you can take the video feed from the racers that are underway and pass that to anybody in the audience who wants to virtually participate in what it's like being on board.
That's correct. I mean, if you've got, I'm making this up a bit, Ted, but
right?
Say you've got 5 pilots flying, you can choose to sit beside any of those 5 pilots.
And there's an incredible overtone and technology transfer that we just experienced this week during some demonstrations. If we took that same capability of the downlinked video from a drone and fed it to a search and rescue person who's forwardly deployed somewhere, he doesn't have to actually fly the thing. Somebody else, a pilot flying the drone in the search and rescue circumstance from a rear area where he's safe, that information being fed down to the goggles or other screen depiction that somebody forward has would be extremely useful for that person forward who is conducting a search and rescue to see the picture, even redirect the pilot and say, move the drone over here, I need this vision, I need a different view, I need a lower, I need higher, I need this angle. And the guy who's actually doing the search and rescue doesn't actually have to be managing and flying the drone. Somebody else is doing that, but he's telling him where to put it because he's looking at the video coming down and making sense out of it and using it to help him figure out what his next step is in a search and rescue activity. So there's an immediate application for what you're talking about that we've already seen happen. And I'm sure we're going to see 100 times that during this drone racing activity. And we spoke before about superimposing a lost at sea or a ocean rescue circumstance in Kualoa in the water out there as part of this racing structure, as sort of a experimental idea of how the people doing the racing can come together and quickly go and respond to a call for help for search and rescue in the ocean. Is that still in the cards?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think we've really defined it yet, Ted. We've got a lot of work to do between now and next October, but certainly developing that piece of the racing structure will be in place by then. I mean, I think that a surf-related search and rescue is very important. I know George Purdy out there on the island of Lanai has been very engaged in that, and I think that we're kind of relying on George a little bit to help us define that and create it, because I think it'd be pretty exciting to be able to to quickly send out a drone to help in dropping off a life support system or being able to bring a person in. There's all kinds of very, very interesting things that can be done with that. And Hawaii is it's the perfect place to be able to do that.
You know, let's pick that up after our first break here and talk about the land side of search and rescue. We were just with FEMA last week in the East Coast, as I mentioned, and an idea came up from them, and I think we can introduce here to our drone racing activity in parallel to the ocean rescue. Let's pick that up when we get back from our first break.
Okay, this is Think Tech Hawaii, and it's Wednesday. Every Wednesday is Energy Wednesday here in Hawaii, the state of clean energy. 4 to 5 p.m. every Wednesday. Come and listen to us. And just to show you what I mean, I'm going to ask Sharon to tell us more.
Come and see us every Wednesday, as Jay said. And we have people like Jim Albers from HECO here and co-host Ray Starling here every Wednesday. We not only go on Olelo and OC16, but also stream live. So please come visit us, hear about the latest in clean energy.
Okay, Jim, you've been here. You got any comment on all this?
As important as energy is in all of our lives today, this is a great forum and a great format to vet those issues. So I encourage everybody to listen in and participate.
Okay, Ray, what do you think for a close?
Well, I think this is the greatest show in the energy world here in Hawaii. You can come here every week, 1 hour, and catch the latest on what's happening and hear from the people who really know what's going on, like Jim Alberts. We appreciate your coming today.
Thank you.
Ray Starling, Sharon Moriwaki, Jim Alberts, and Jay Fidel here in Hawaii, the state of clean energy. 4 to 5
Aloha.
p.m. Wednesday. Aloha.
Aloha.
We're back, folks. Ted Ralston here, Bruce Parks in Silicon Valley, California, and as our guest on Where the Road Leads, or Where the Drone Leads, our first show of 2016. And we're just talking before the break about the drone racing activity that Bruce and his organization, Rotorsports, have planned for October in 2016, Kualoa. And we talked about adding a surf rescue circumstance to it as not so much a piece of the racing, but as a way to test the technology and test the ability of the people to come together, the drone racers to come together and put the ability on the table quickly to go out and find a target in the ocean. And as I was mentioning, we were in the East Coast last week with some FEMA folks up in Concord, New Hampshire, and one of the issues they have in search and rescue, they got the cold country, of course, which we don't have here, so they have time-based survival as a factor for them. They have forests and woods different than what we have. We have the ko'olaus. But one of the observations they made is simply getting a fresh cell phone in the hands of somebody who's lost, a hiker who's lost or something like that, getting them a fresh cell phone or a cell phone if they haven't got one so they can put them in communication. That so much improves the odds of getting that person back, including all the way to the point of self-rescue, where having that information in their hands and the ability to communicate, they can be directed to a point where they can be met or they can come out of the situation all by themselves. So I was thinking, as we were talking before the break, maybe we can add a land component, a land search component to the competition as well. I mean, you got a perfect place to do it. The valley of the ko'olaus there around Kualoa has some very rugged terrain and a target placed up there that the drone racers have to go find and then drop off a payload to, a small payload, half-pound cell phone, something like that, would be a superb second test of the technology applied
Absolutely.
in a really positive way.
And you know, Ted, perhaps some of your viewers themselves may come up with something that they think would be an interesting way to test the application of these drones in a search and rescue situation. So, you know, just putting it out there on your show is, you know, we would encourage people. We want a large community of people really to help us develop the industry, develop thoughts, develop techniques and solutions to a wide range of problems that exist that, in truth, a lot of people haven't thought of and maybe nobody has thought of. So we'd really encourage people to participate. Simply call you and say, look, maybe we could do this or do that.
You know what we can do? We can talk to the public safety people. We're pretty well in touch with HPD and HFD and DEM and such. We can have them describe the circumstance that they'd like for a maritime side rescue and for a Mauka side rescue up in the mountains and have them spring it on us, not give us any chance to think about it in advance. It gets sprung on us at the moment of occurrence, right there in the middle of the drone racing.
Yep, that can happen.
Well, we'll get a hold of them this week, Bruce, and see if we can get some robust dialogue going here on that subject.
Perfect.
That's pretty cool. And again, you know, the whole idea, there's so much additional information available and the way the information is distributed available by virtue of the drones and, again, the multiple ways of getting the information down to people who can use it. It's so nonlinear. It's a little difficult to control yourself thinking of how far forward this could really go. And you know, you had mentioned the FAA at the top of the show. The FAA is moving forward, bending over backwards, helping people get this kind of capability out in the commercial world and out in the what's called the public aircraft ops world, which is where government agencies can use equipment for public benefit services. And it's the yin and yang of life is such that the commercial activity kind of overshadowed the public aircraft ops activity in the last year. The 333 exemption came forth. There's about 3,500 of them out there now. So there's such a land rush of 333 exemptions and operators that the public aircraft side kind of got forgotten. Well, that's now turning around, and they're going to try to trump the 333s and have a lot of access of very flexible and useful means of getting public aircraft, UASs in a public aircraft circumstance brought forward. So we'll see some of those initiatives and those doctrines coming forth very soon in this year. And that's good because that allows the public safety people to actually get their hands on this kind of capability and make something out of it. And the drone racing, once again, provides some of the guidance and some of the inspiration for the systems that can assist these guys moving forward. So again, it's going to be a very exciting year here in 2016, and it's incredible that you've thought of opening up the whole bidding on the drone racing here in Hawaii.
Well, I mean, it's exciting to be engaged with it. But you know, Ted, you've been engaged with the public safety side of this for quite some time, and frankly, you know, when you're looking at search and rescue, when you're looking at emergency services, I don't care whether it's fire or police or rescue at sea, the opportunities to use this particular technology in those arenas is just truly, it's overwhelming. And you were just mentioning, you know, the forward position view of people in a search and rescue situation or a fire situation. I personally think that really should be the near-term application of this technology, because when you need it, boy, you really need it, and you need it fast. And I think that more attention should be paid to that. And I know you've been very much in the forefront of that, not only in Hawaii, but in Alaska and throughout the United States. And I applaud you for that, because I think that it's critically important and not fully understood nor appreciated by most folks. And I think that the emergency service providers are finally beginning to get a handle on it, beginning to see the use of the applications. And so I'm excited to see that working.
Well, we're trying to take that in another direction as well. And once again, I must say every segment of this show, the word drone racing, because it's the inspiration for a lot of this thinking. We got this idea a couple of months ago, and I've talked to the FAA about it. The idea is that the power grid in the U.S., that means the distribution lines, the transmission system, the towers, and the easements, and the substations, that taken together across the nation is an interesting target in terms of development of drone utility, because there's no airplanes where the power lines are. If you're an airplane, you don't go where power lines are. That's kind of the rules of the road. So that space around the power lines and around the power structure is arguably negotiable to be used by small drones to do the determination of the condition of the power lines and the vegetation growing around and the fire hazards and such like that. And secondly, the power grid is extremely significant in disaster operations. It's the first thing you depend on in disaster recovery is getting the power back up, because power drives everything. It drives your health devices, it drives lights, it drives water pumps and everything. So power and power grid management as part of the disaster recovery activity is a great place to practice the art or develop the art of drone utility extrapolated from the drone racing into that world of disaster management. And it is, thirdly, by virtue of that heavily structured environment that the power grid is, it's a great place to learn the technology of beyond line of sight. Because the devices I mentioned to you that can pull imagery or pull information and extract features out of streaming video can be developed to follow the power lines, to follow the poles, to look for down trees, albizia trees across the power lines here. Change detection from what we had the week before. These things can be expressed and developed in the power grid context and the restricted environment around the power grid, and then transported elsewhere into the infrastructure for the larger benefit of beyond line of sight use in infrastructure management of whatever kind it may be. So we're thinking about that, Bruce, and what we'd like to ask you, as an AVUSI guy, is how do we turn that kind of a challenge into an AVUSI competition that we could do annually that would then allow academia and scholastic activities and drone or robotics clubs to come together and attack these problems, one level harder every year over a long period of time, not only begin solving the problems, but also encouraging the young folks who are in these clubs to be active participants and to go on and get their advanced degrees, get their PhDs, and really perform at a high level in this game. Who do we take that to in AVUSI?
Well, I think that those are the kinds of things, Ted, that really kind of have to originate with the people who are actually trying to implement that kind of technology, because as you begin to implement it, you begin to see ways in which people can be creative and can really kind of create tests for themselves to see what they can and can't accomplish, and within a time frame. So I think that that's going to come out of that naturally. And obviously, anybody that is in those fields and has any thoughts as to how we might create an event around that kind of utility operation, would be very open to looking at it.
But let's pick that up and talk about that on the last segment here, which we'll come back to as soon as we've completed this next break. But I'd like to explore that one step further after the break.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Donna Blanchard. I'm the host of Center Stage here on Think Tech Hawaii. Center Stage airs every Wednesday at 2 o'clock, and of course you can check out our archives on YouTube or on Think Tech Hawaii anytime you like. Why should you do that? Because this is an arts show that I believe is making a difference in lives. We talk with artists of various ilk. We talk with painters and writers, playwrights, novelists, poets, sculptors, dancers, you name it, directors, actors, of course. And we don't only talk about what people do, but we talk about how they do it. And my favorite part of the conversation, we talk about why they do it. And it's really common on this show to hear people say, wow, I didn't think about it that way. And it's very common to hear people afterwards who have seen the show say the same thing. And I hear all the time that people are inspired by the conversations that we have. So why don't you join us and be inspired too? That's Center Stage on Wednesdays at 2 o'clock. We'll see you Center Stage.
With that, even begin
Friday
to think
afternoon,
about.
folks. Ted Ralston here. We're back in downtown Honolulu with the final segment of our show, Where the Drone Leads, here on the 15th. First show of the season, or the season end of the year, and welcoming back one of our frequent flyer guests, Bruce Park, who's in Silicon Valley, California, associated with many organizations that are tied to the future of the evolving unmanned air systems or drones. So we're just talking before the break about sponsorship and how we turn some of these industry beneficial concepts into competitions that could draw the attention of the young people in the robotics clubs and the high schools and colleges and such, and at the same time give them the opportunity to work with the industries and the power companies and the infrastructure and begin contributing to the solution of these complex problems that we see going forward. So the idea was, Bruce, we got some interesting noise here. The idea was we have the power industry as a central part of the 24/7 operations as well as disaster response. And if we can get the power companies and the insurance companies to think about the importance of getting that power grid back up again. And you could probably measure that benefit in hours. 1 hour faster in terms of recovery is worth so much in terms of the economy and people's health and public health and such. Assuming we could do all that, I'd like to get AUVSI to look at that and think how we could include, if we get sponsorship for it from private industry, how we get AUVSI to kind of develop or construct an annual competition that would then put the challenge out in front of everybody and let them all see the challenge and participate. Is that something we can do? We can work that into AUVSI?
Well, you know, the truth of the matter is, Ted, the AUVSI we'd certainly participate in that endeavor, but it's really going to come from the drone racing itself, and it's got to be, it'll come on, more likely come under that umbrella with the sponsorship of the Silicon Valley AUVSI and others. I mean, we need to be working with a wide spectrum of people from the industry, including, you know, not the least of which would be NASA and the international, the IEE, IEEE, a whole range of people within a variety of industries to begin to look at some of these problems and to create solutions for them and to test them. And really within the drone racing competitive environment, you get a look at how you can do these faster, quicker, and more effectively. And I think that's what these competitions can help do.
You know what we can do? Maybe jumping ahead here, but I would think we could even include a sub-element of this issue, the power grid examination, power grid restoration in some way in the October event. Right alongside the Mackay Rescue and the Malka Rescue, let's do an infrastructure recovery aspect.
Well, again, absolutely. You know, if there's somebody, if one of your viewers wants to come with us and say, look, I think we could do this or that, we're very open. We'd like to do it.
I think we can think about that real hard. This is exciting. And again, I think we can, in the case of this power grid thing, we have plenty of power within the plenty of influence within the power industry and the insurance industry who would like to make this go forward. So we could take the first cut at that as part of the October racing activity, and then from that learn, go forward, and make it into an annual event similar to the other AUVSI competitions, which, to my surprise, have been going on for 15 or 20 years in some cases. And it's quite incredible and probably not well known what AUVSI has done in terms of putting these competitions out, which draw the kids in. I'm working with the UH kids here on the one coming up in June of this year in Greenbelt, Maryland. That's a pretty impressive requirement. It's basically a search and rescue activity, but the operation has to be done totally on board. You get deducted points if you use a hand controller like we do in radio-controlled airplanes these days. Everything has to be autonomous. And that includes the extraction of imagery from the pictures or the video, whatever you want to call it, and the turning in a report to the judges of what the targets look like on the ground you found and their geolocation. That's all going to be automatic. This is incredible. I mean, we don't have that anywhere in industry today. So we're asking the kids to go out and take these challenges and find out ways to push forward and get these things to happen. We're talking, Bruce, once again, autonomous operation, autonomous extraction of information from the onboard imagery, and basically a self-driving drone, so to speak, that knows where to go and find the targets.
Yeah, well, you're going to see a lot of that innovation. That's for certain, Ted. I mean, again, like I've said multiple times, the level of innovation is something we really can't quite imagine. But there's so many creative thinking people out there, and we're not just talking about the United States, worldwide, that are beginning to use this technology in a whole range of ways and being able to do it successfully.
And you know, and a big part of this, as I experienced this week, is how you take the information being generated on board and distribute it forward or distribute it rearward or wherever you want to distribute it to get people to pay attention to it or to take advantage of it if they want. So I'm thinking that we spend so much time thinking about the UAV itself, the vehicle. We spend a lot of time thinking about that. What we need to spend more time thinking about collectively is how you get the information out of that and make it useful, and even to the extent of keeping its operation the operating aspects of it away from the people using the information and treat them to just consumers of the information. And that means transmission down, that means extrapolation of features from, in such a way that the people who need the information can get it quickly without having to burden themselves by flying the thing. All they need is to put the goggles on for 30 seconds and see the picture that they need, and then go on and get their job done, including the lifeguard. You know, we don't want to have the lifeguard sit there with his head in a screen when he should be out swimming in the water looking for his drowning victim. We ought to have that drone managing itself. It ought to know where to go. It ought to know what to do.
You know, you're right in that assessment. You know, drones really, Ted, and I think the general public doesn't think about it in this sense, but you know, a drone is really just a tool, and the primary purpose of that tool is to gather data. I mean, just like a hammer's primary use is to drive nails. Well, a drone's primary use is to gather data, whether it's photographic imagery, whether it's sensory information, topographic information, LiDAR information. All of that sort of thing is simply data. And you use that data in ways that we haven't been able to utilize before, simply because we haven't had that data. And you begin to see things with that data that you were not able to see previously.
Right, so it's the collection, the analysis, and then the forward positioning of that information to the guy who needs it, which is the real value here. And having said that, that means we have to get the people who need to consume this information to define for us what their requirements are and help them see have them help us decide what to design. Right now, I think we're in a manufacturing rich situation where the manufacturers decide what they're going to put out there. We haven't heard enough from the users, perhaps because we haven't exercised it enough to give them an idea of what they can even ask for. So once again, even the drone racing world provides that access to emergency operators. They could see the drone racing operation in place, and they could immediately figure out how they would use that in their own world, and that can be used to kind of inversely define requirements, which then become a body of information that the manufacturers can turn to in order to design systems that perform the right mission.
Yeah, I think that's a correct assessment, Ted. And my view is that the greater the number of people that we have engaged in the industry, it's almost your knowledge increases geometrically. You're really able to see things, do things, and understand things in a far different way than you normally would be able to. And the more minds you put on the problem, faster you're going to get more solutions, and even solutions to things that you don't see as being a problem.
You know, and again, it was thanks to you and Scott and the others for having the thought power to put forth the drone racing aspect, because it is such a powerful message and signal that's contained in that exercise. Things are fast, things are accurate, things are precise. It isn't your old slow-going drone that just sits there hanging in the sky somewhere. This is a cutting-edge element of capability that I think is much more inspirational than the old style, if you will, last year's drones, in terms of exciting people in the public safety arena, for example, in terms of what they can ask for in terms of capability and how to use this. For example, the drones we saw during the site survey sessions last year have so much performance margin. They can handle the wind situation we have here in Hawaii very nicely. They can handle 25, 30 knot winds, no problem, gusting 40. They can handle the rate of climb necessary to handle the turbulence alongside the ko'olaus. So if you really wanted to do an effective up-close search and rescue, that's the kind of system you need. And it's they in the racing game who are doing that, because they need high performance margins to be successful in racing. That generates the high performance margins. In fact, you might even think that the drone racers are the first real example of purpose-designed drones that are out there. Everything else has been inherited from other configurations and radio-controlled airplanes, but the drone racers really have demanded the performance margins and the durability and the ease of assembly. It's the first real transition into the world of purpose-designed systems. And
Yeah,
I'd like, Before I forget, I want to say one thing that Margie and I spent some time last week in the East Coast again, and we spent some time down at Physical Sciences Inc. in Boston and saw an incredible capability of a very small drone to have the onboard camera look at the carpet pattern or the linoleum pattern on the floor and the wall patterns of the windows and such on the side of a building and navigate itself inside a building with nothing more than a Raspberry Pi based analysis routine that could extract information from the video and determine rate of closure and forward versus rear progression and such, and without any GPS or any other guidance system, use almost an instinctive visual extraction similar to what insects use in order to how they navigate. So we'll see these technologies coming forth. I'd like to take some of that technology, make it available to the racers, and let them then take it the next step.
Well, again, there's just so many ways in which the applications can be used that the more people are engaged in it, the better off we all are.
I really enjoy the opportunity on this show because we do there's nothing scripted here. We all come together and talk about these things and see what develops. We developed several items right here that I think are very useful to us, and I'll follow up with them, and I'll make sure that allow you to follow up on them as well, Bruce, as we go forward here. But that's one of the nice things about this. We can bring things in that haven't been cured and put them together, try them out, in this way, and then determine what next steps we can take. So I thank you incredibly for the leadership you've provided here. And I really like the way you come at things from, it's such a relief from the more technical side that you see often in coming up in this business. So Bruce Parks in Silicon Valley at EUVSI and Rotorsports Inc. and a number of other affiliations and a bakery as well in there somewhere, I think. Thank you very much for coming on the show, our first one of the year, Bruce. And
all right,
we'll get you back a lot.
It's always a pleasure, Ted.
Right, and we'll get you out here. You got to come out here 1 or 2 times before the actual show in October, and then in October we'll actually have you and some of the drone racers here at the table.
Perfect.
And so I thank you very much, and folks, we'll see you next Friday where the drone leads returns to the show, or to the air, TV, whatever it is. See you.
Hello, everybody. I'm IC Davidson. Thanks for tuning in to Think Tech Hawaii. One of the things that we do here, or the thing that we do here, is promote civic engagement in Hawaii. What does that mean? We want to talk about things that people want to hear about, and we want you to engage us and be part of that conversation. One of the ways that you can do that is by joining in during our live show via Twitter. How do you do that? Well, you get on the interwebs and get Twitter, get an account, and mention us if you have a question. What you'll do is you tune into our show live, tweet us questions, and our hosts and guests will address them accordingly. It's really easy, it's really fun, and I think that your participation in what we're doing here will help us continue the dialogue on very important issues that we're trying to cover. Sustainability, clean energy, you name it, we're on top of it. We want you to be part of what we're doing because together we'll be able to make things change. Thank you for watching. Think Tech Hawaii, thinktechhawaii.com, weekdays 12 to 5 p.m.